Okay, this is a quick explanation of how a firm would go from the short run cost to long run cost. And remember, in the short run, one of the factors of production, usually capital, is going to remain constant. And that's what we mean by here when we have the short run cost curves, and there's a series of them. But this is saying 1 unit of capital, this is 2 units of capital, this is 3 units, and this is 4 units of capital. So remember, in the short run, we keep the capital constant, but of course we're not saying that there'll only ever be 1. It could be that there's 2 units of capital or 3, etc. And so you have a series of short run average cost curves, which I've drawn in blue, red, green, and then yellow. So if a firm starts to expand from, say, this output here, where the short run cost is up here, then if it was on the short run cost curve with only 1 unit of capital, what will happen with the firm is that it will reduce its costs here with this 1 unit of capital, but then the short run average cost will start to rise. And if you remember what the reasoning for that is that all these extra units of workers, because those are the variable factors, are still trying to use this 1 unit of capital. However, if they had 2 units of capital, then as they increase their output, they could have that sort of average cost. So the average cost would fall, and then it would rise in the same way as if they had 3 capital and 4 capital. So what we're saying, and we'll see on the next slide, is that in the long run, we can now change to any of these short run cost curves. We could actually increase our capital from 1 to 2 to 3 or to 4. And so when we get down here and we increase our output and we have 1 unit of capital, the firm now has to make a decision. Shall it keep 1 unit of capital, in which case its cost will start to rise, or should it buy a second unit of capital? And if it did, then its average costs would go onto this red line here, and they would continue over here until this unit of output. Then what could happen is that this unit, if they kept 2 units of capital, they would start to rise, the cost would rise. But if they were able to move on to the third, the green short run average cost curve with 3 units of capital, now they can move on to this lowest part here, and so on. So we've basically just made these a bit lower in resolution, so you can still see them, I hope. But what we're saying is that as a firm in the long run increases its output, it will go down this short run average cost with 1 unit of capital, then it'll move on to the second unit of capital, then move on to the third unit, then you move on to the fourth unit, etc. And so the long run average cost curve is this black line here, which runs along the bottom parts of the short run curves. Now, some people say it is at the lowest point of these short run curves. Well, you can see that it's not quite true if you read that, because there's an element here, for example, when the cost will start to rise, and then at that point you'll buy 3 units of capital and move on to this short run cost curve. So there's an element where it starts to go up. It's not necessarily this lowest point here. And then really, for simplicity's sake, what we do is we smooth out this sort of bumpy long run cost curve, and so that's why you see a cost curve which is drawn in the long run as this sort of smoothed out line like so. So I hope that makes that clear.